Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. Whoa, we are so excited today. Today, we are talking about the Fairfield Mental Health Alliance, an alliance that wherever you are, you can either create or join and manifest doing good work in your world around you. We're going to also talk with Lance Lashley, one of my wonderful interns, who's made such a difference for so many people already. And we are going to talk about how you can identify what's going on with you to make a bigger difference in your life through the example of what Lance has done. You are listening to Mental Health Matters with Dr. Scott Terry at KRUU FM, 100.1 on your FM dial, or on the internet everywhere. We also have a new YouTube channel that we're still developing where some of the shows are already being listed, and they're all archived, well, at least most of them are archived, at KRUU FM. You could also email us, and I've been giving out my personal email so people could email me directly regarding issues of the show and anything else that you want regarding the Fairfield Mental Health Alliance joining us, or other areas where you'd like to see some additions to this world that you live in. My personal email is Scott, SCOTT, at ardentcenter.com. Ardent is ARDENTCENTER.com. Anyways, today with us is, again, one of my great interns, Lance Lashley. Lance, tell them about yourself.
Hi, Dr. Terry. I'm really grateful that you've invited me to be here today. I'm a recent graduate of MUM, getting ready to...
That's Maharishi University Management for people outside of Fairfield.
That's right. Great place, university. Getting ready to apply to grad school. I've been working with you now. I guess it's been for 5 or 6 months. And I've struggled with depression and anxiety myself, and that's something that affects a lot of people. And through my meditation and through other things, I've learned to deal with it and to manage it. And so that's why I'm here today, is really to talk about that, but also to mention an organization that you formed, the Jefferson County Fairfield Mental Health Alliance. And I've recently become a part of that organization, joined the committee, and we're doing some really good things for the community, and we want people to know about this organization. The purpose of the Mental Health Alliance.
And this is written down, and you guys can see this whenever you want. And again, this is a local organization for the city and the community. Everybody, both mental health providers and non-providers, can join and be part of this organization. But even if you're living, let's say, in Chicago or wherever you're at around the world, there are organizations that you can join, or if you need support to form, to make a difference in your community.
Yeah. So the purpose of the Fairfield Jefferson County Mental Health Alliance is to improve the mental health environment of Jefferson County and Fairfield, Iowa, by identifying the unmet mental health needs within the community. And toward this aim, we're trying to facilitate mental health educational events and knowledge meetings for people in the community. We're having a monthly meeting. And you can find information about when we're getting together on Facebook, facebook.com/Fairfield Mental Health, or you can go to fairfieldmentalhealth.org.
Can you read those names again? You read this kind of fast.
Yeah, it's fairfieldmentalhealth.org.
fairfieldmentalhealth.org.
And on Facebook, you can search Fairfield Mental Health. Or
okay, Facebook, Fairfield Mental Health. Just type it into the search thing.
Just
I'm not a great Facebook person.
Just type it into the search bar, or go to facebook.com/Fairfield Mental Health.
And you could always email us, and we'll hook you up.
Yes. So there's lots of other things that the organization is thinking about doing. One of the things via Facebook and social media is profiling local mental health providers so that people can go onto Facebook and see a picture and put a name with a face. That's something that's really important.
With specialties and what people do.
That's correct. It's been my own experience that it's challenging for someone suffering from anxiety or depression or some other mental health concern to find someone who they feel comfortable with on the first try. You pick up a provider list and you just have some names and numbers, and you kind of have to go see someone and see if they're a good fit. But sometimes if you can read someone's bio or see a picture of them, you can just get more of an intuitive feeling about whether or not they would be a good fit and they would be able to help you more. So,
yeah, it's true. I mean, in Chicago, in just one suburb, Evanston, north of Chicago, I was listed on the 4th page, and there were, 20, 30 therapists listed on every page. And so nobody would have even found me on their list, and if they would, how would they have known the difference between me and somebody else? It's like going to the voting booth and having no idea, just some name there.
Yeah, it's a big problem because, if you're depressed, it's hard to pick up some provider list or get online and look for someone for help. It's
trying to have enough energy to do it, or like you were talking about, even physically.
Yes.
What were you saying before about physically? Even when you're depressed, physically,
yeah, there are lots of symptoms of depression, and that's something that I want to address. I think first I'd like to start from the beginning a little bit and tell a little bit more of my story, and then I'll talk about some of the symptoms that I've experienced and how I've overcome them. But I was born in a single-parent home. I was raised by my mother, who suffered from depression and anxiety and other forms of mental illness. And so biologically, I was just predispositioned to having these things in my life.
It was really both, because one, biologically, you have the genetic possibilities, right? Predisposed, like an alcoholic, if you have alcohol in your family. And the second part is you were modeled how to be depressed and anxious as a way to deal with stressors in the world. That's
right. I saw my mom, and she just was not a good example of, of a stable, individual who could really deal with life and knew how to manage her life. She did the best she could, no doubt. But I just wanted to mention that.
We just say, she did the best she could, and I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah. But so then there's the biological basis. I was biologically predisposed to having depression. There's the environmental factor, having a single parent, who's depressed, who can't hold a job. Is really difficult, and so then there's the economic disadvantage, nutritional disadvantage.
Right, because if you're depressed, you're not eating as healthy because it's hard to get yourself together,
and you can't afford the healthy organic foods.
You can't get the job.
That's right,
and to even get the energy to go out and buy healthy foods and look and research what works for your body, let alone for your kid's body.
Yes, so. It was a difficult start for me, no doubt. Don't want to focus on that too much. When I was 9 years old, my aunt adopted me, and she was a much more stable influence. She's an educator, and so I was able to go live with her and really get. She gave me a better life, a more stable life, and that was wonderful. But around puberty, I realized that I was a gay man. Not a man at that time, but I realized that I was gay, and coming out, living in Georgia, in the Bible Belt in the South, was a very, very difficult thing. I was bullied relentlessly in junior and high school, and that's one of those kind of social environmental things that can compound a depression in someone who's biologically more likely to have it. Right. So that's exactly what happened in my case. I became very, very depressed.
The perfect storm, as they say, between biology, circumstances, and being modeled systemically how to deal with life in a depressed way. So it all hit you, plus being gay in the South, where, homosexuality was seen as I don't know, you tell me what it was seen as.
Well, it was everything was in terms of fundamentalism, and so it was considered this great sin. There's this literal interpretation of the Bible, and so
it's a literal interpretation of somebody's version of what the Bible is.
That's right.
Which is different than what somebody might think of as the words of Jesus or the words of Muhammad or the words of in the Jewish Torah. It's again, we have to be careful when we talk about religion. Are we talking about the religion itself or somebody's interpretation and then what they've made it mean and made you believe it means instead of you having a connection directly to God?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good point. So, at that point, the depression really escalated, and that led to my experimentation with drugs and alcohol to kind of deal with what I was feeling in my life.
Even that young?
Yeah, when I was 15, 16 is when I really started using drugs and alcohol to cope with that. I was really lucky. I had a good group of friends, and one of my best friends in high school, his name's John Wright, he really helped me. He did not use drugs, and I feel like because I actually surrounded myself with some people who were not drug users and who had some clarity and sense of purpose, that I was really saved in that sense, that they were able to kind of help me consider another path. And so, that just illustrates how there's this biological basis, there's this environmental basis, psychological basis to depression and anxiety. So some of the symptoms I wanted to talk about, because a lot of people who have depression, have these physical symptoms and emotional symptoms, of course, but it's so prevalent in our society that they don't necessarily even acknowledge that they have, this depression. So for me, it's something that in the research is often referred to as psychomotor retardation. And it's that feeling when you wake up in the morning that you just cannot move your body. You can't get out of bed. You can't think clearly. You can't speak clearly. It becomes more difficult to communicate with other people. You have the desire to be around people, and you're lonely, and you want to fix that, but it's difficult to converse. It's like you just feel drained.
And that's not true for everybody, but certainly was true for you and for a number of people, and people with melancholy, for instance, whose difficulty is more in the morning and other kinds of things.
Yeah, I think by and large, people with depression have these symptoms, but it may be that it's not as prevalent. At the same time, like say in the morning, some people are able to get up and function well.
But that lack of clarity itself, it's like when I had my accident. I'm not able to think clearly, and at the same time, I'm then having to deal with the bills after the accident and people coming down on me when I can't even function enough to take care of myself. And there's, I'm sorry to go into it.
No, yeah, I mean, it's the symptoms can be overwhelming to someone. Another symptom is, chronic insomnia. And so,
which of course makes everything worse.
It makes everything worse.
And sleep disorders are prevalent in almost every condition we see. And you almost have to think of it as both holistically, how am I going to deal with the whole package of what's going on, as well as each individual symptom. How am I going to address taking care of my sleep patterns and getting out of my bad habits so that I get to sleep at a better time, sleep for, again, 7.5 to 9 hours. Sleeping more than 9 hours is destructive. Sleeping less than 7.5 hours is destructive. Yes, there's a very, very few people on the planet who could do better, who could do with less, but that's very, very few. And if you're listening to this right now, it's probably not you.
Yes.
So, again, getting healthy sleep patterns are essential. So, but you got to look at it as both the whole package, dealing, like we said, with the circumstances, with the biology, with the patterning that you've been inherited of watching and repeating, as well as your own habits. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's something, that's important to address. The symptoms, I mean, I think it goes without saying most people know that they're depressed, but there's this kind of denial in our society. And there's also a stigma, and we talk about that a lot at the Fairfield Mental Health Alliance meetings. And that's one of the other goals of that group.
We
it's to
definitely
reduce
want to hear
stigma.
the rest of the goals and the mission statement, which I kind of cut you off for. By the way, you're listening to Mental Health Matters on KRUU FM 100.1 on your FM dial. Today we're talking to Lance about some of his experiences, as well as this Mental Health Alliance that we've created to try and make a difference for people in this community, but also as a way to help people around the world think about their communities and what's going on with themselves to take control over what's going on.
Yes.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to be here. Continuing on, though, using drugs to cope is a common, occurrence in people who have depression. And so it wasn't until it wasn't until my early 20s that I really was able to see the destruction that was causing in my life. And I was able to move away from that. And one of the things that really helped me to do that was seeking out a counselor. I went to see a licensed clinical social worker and a psychologist as well. And, did talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and some other modalities with them for a number of years before I moved to Fairfield and learned meditation. So that was really the start of my journey toward recovery. But I also want to make the point that depression in some ways is kind of like alcoholism. The general consensus is that, and this is something we were discussing earlier, is that an alcoholic is always an alcoholic. They may stop drinking, and that's just one point of view. It doesn't hold true for everyone. Some people believe, that they can be cured from their alcoholism, and I think in some sense that's true, and it's the same for depression. But recovery from depression and any kind of mental illness exists on this kind of continuum. It doesn't just happen and then you're there. It's something that I'm still struggling with, all these years later. But I've learned to cope with it in some really kind of, unique ways. You come up with whatever you can.
I think it has to be unique for everybody, though.
That's right.
And given your previous point, it's yes, we're always struggling with whatever we're going through, but we don't have to get lost in that identification. I am a depressed person. It's more not being in denial and getting over the stigma and the shame and the guilt and the remorse and the yada, 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 and saying, no more judgment. Okay, I'm going to be honest, call a spade a spade. I have depression. Okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to create? What's my unique...
unique set of things that you do to control it and manage it. I mean, for me, it's been continuing therapy, but more than anything, the biggest thing that has helped me is meditation, daily meditation, a daily spiritual practice. I practice TM. I came here, Transcendental Meditation. I came here to Fairfield, Iowa to attend Maharishi University primarily because I wanted to learn to meditate, and I was interested in a university that had a curriculum that integrated meditation into the coursework. It was a really unique thing.
So you've used that tool of meditation to make a huge difference.
Yes.
And that's really what it comes down to, is using our tools to take control over our lives.
That's correct.
Is there another way you'd say that? Did I say that right?
No, I that's exactly right. It's important to have good tools, and meditation is a really, really good tool that, it's been widely researched, scientifically researched.
Yeah, over 500 published studies. Yeah.
Many studies show that, it has great benefits for people suffering from not only depression, but anxiety, and other things as well. And so I'm not going to say that it's a panacea. It hasn't cured my depression as such, but it's helped me to reframe my outlook and to put my depression into more of a spiritual context. And it's helped me to have hope.
And to be on the process, as opposed to, in this society, we want the quick fix. Give me a pill I'll be done.
Right.
It's like, no, it's a journey. And the depression in some ways has served you, even though it's been destructive and hard.
There's no doubt about it. It's made me a very compassionate and understanding person.
Which you certainly are.
It's helped me to see, people in a different light and to really see who they are beneath everything else, beneath the story, that most of us kind of get caught up in. And so, for that reason, I'm grateful for depression. And I think that that's another thing that really helps someone to bring meaning and hope to their depression, is to is to see the value of the depression. You have to ask yourself, what is this depression trying to tell me? And that's a big question. And that's a question that you really have to, it's something you have to explore. And it's best, I think, to do that with a licensed mental health provider or a spiritual counselor.
But I love how you said that.
Yes.
What is it trying to tell me? What am I trying to tell myself to allow myself to finally be free and create something more productive?
And it's a question that I still ask myself, and it's a question that I don't necessarily have an answer to. I wish that I could sit here and say
process, not product.
That's right. That's why it's a process. And it's, I think, just asking yourself questions like that is moving in the direction of wholeness and health, and not getting stuck in the cycle of depression. You have to do something to kind of get out of the cycle. And that's one of the things you can do. But, after I started meditating, it wasn't very long before I noticed that I was, just much more calm, and I was able to, get up in the morning and not feel like I'd been run over by a, tractor trailer after having slept for 8 hours. I was able to converse with people in a more meaningful way. And I was able to, cultivate more of a sense of compassion and understanding from my own experience, and that, was reflected in my relationships with other people. And so, it's if you don't have some kind of daily spiritual practice, that's something, that you have to explore. And it's going to be different for everyone. It's not going to be TM for everyone. And so it's a fun, kind of exciting thing to start to think about, your purpose and those big questions that we all ask ourselves. Why am I here? What am I doing? Etc.
Wow, that's awesome. I love how you're saying this. And people who listen to this might want to gravitate towards one thing or another of your story. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody who's listening and they'd say, "Oh, it's because yada yada," or you're some people would pick out that you're gay, and that's the issue of something. Are you today, when you look at your mom, or you're gay, or 50 other things that have happened to you, the bullying, I mean, any one of 100 things which were difficult at that time, which you don't need to be, and obviously you don't seem like you're lost in today. Obviously, it's a wonderful thing, and you have no problem saying, "Hey, I'm depressed," or "I'm this," or "I'm that," and say, I'm taking advantage of it all.
I would say to other people who are struggling with depression that, our stories are totally unique. Everyone has an individual story, and there's an individual and unique cause. What brings us together is that, it's something that, in terms of symptoms and in terms of the way that we feel emotionally, there are a lot of similarities. So we can relate on that level. But, if someone, who's listening is really depressed, I would say to them, it's important to try and reach out to someone in the community, whether that's a psychologist or professional counselor or a social worker or a friend, anyone. And talk therapy is really valuable. It's not the total cure. It's not going to fix everything, but sometimes, decreasing loneliness is one of the things that can really get you to a point where you can start to explore these other things that we've been talking about. And decreasing loneliness means interacting with other people on some basis. And so, I would just encourage people to try and reach out. It can be very, very difficult. I know that it's very challenging. There can be this kind of paradoxical feeling of being lonely, which is what we've been mentioning, feeling lonely and wanting to connect with people, but not having the energy to do it. It's like one of the symptoms I've experienced with depression is feeling like I'm dragging my body. That's the only, I've said that to my therapist, I feel like I'm not really present as such. It's just like I'm having to pull my body along to do stuff and my mind as well. And it can be, it's a horrible, horrible feeling. And, you know, just, you have to take courage. That's, you know, the bottom line, you know. There's a psychiatrist in Los Angeles. She's an author and intuitive, as well. Her name is Judith Orloff, and she's written many books on dealing with psychological problems. One of her books is called Emotional Freedom, and she talks a lot about depression. And I would encourage everyone to look into her work. I forgot the point that I had another point there, but one of the other symptoms of depression is, you know, memory loss, and not exactly
that's a brain
having
fog,
total clarity. Yeah, there's a definite brain fog.
But there, you know, what was also interesting, you haven't mentioned in this interview, but we've mentioned before, some of the other things you've done is you've also taken a number of supplements that have supported this, and you've tried a number of other things to do it, and you've done finishing where we started with the Mental Health Alliance, which has been powerful in the sense of making it where you can volunteer. And volunteerism comes back to this sense of purpose in life. Coming back to your purpose and what are you here to create and do now? So yes, that stuff happened then, and we're not in denial about the past, but what we're focused on is what do we want to create for our future today? That's
right. That's exactly right. I remembered the point that I was going to make about Dr. Orloff's book, Emotional Freedom. In the book, she says that her spiritual teacher told her that the number one quality that you have to have on a spiritual path is endurance. And that's directly correlated with courage. And so, you know, overcoming depression is something that takes courage and endurance.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yes. So take hope. You know, you did mention supplements. I don't think we have too much longer to discuss this. Maybe we can do another show on that. One of the things that I've really benefited from is omega-3 supplementation.
And the research is showing somewhere between 3 and 7 milligrams, depending on how much, and the correct dosage between EPA and DHA, which we could all talk about more further later.
Yes.
But I want to finish up with the Mental Health Alliance again, and to read the goals, and to sit there and say how that volunteerism is making a difference for you as part of this package of you being so strong. And one would see you today, and as an outsider doesn't even notice the depression or anything else because you're so strong, and you have nothing to feel funny about in any way. You don't show you show courage in everything you do. It's really powerful.
Yeah, thank you for that. That feels good to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, I see you, and it's like, damn.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah. So, yeah, volunteering is a huge thing. It makes you feel good. That's the bottom line. You know, you help other people, you're helping yourself at the same time. And so, you know, if someone wants to get involved in volunteer work, they can certainly come to one of the meetings for the Fairfield Mental Health Alliance. And again, you can find out about these meeting times on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/Fairfield Mental Health Alliance, or just search for Fairfield Mental Health Alliance. We also have a website, fairfieldmentalhealth.org.
Which we need support finishing up, and we're going to clean up a little bit more, but it's looking awesome. Joe's done an incredible job getting that together.
But don't be afraid to come to one of these meetings and reach out. One of the primary goals that we mentioned earlier is to reduce the stigma that's associated with depression and other mental health disorders, whether that's bipolar disorder or whatever it is. So, you know, getting together and talking with other people is something that's really important, and thinking about ways that we can help other community members is one of the primary goals of the Mental Health Alliance.
And why don't you leave us with reading the mission plan, and then we're going to head on out.
Yeah. So the mission statement is basically that we want to alleviate any stigma, again, associated with mental health, and to support a culture of inclusiveness. And we strive to achieve this through increasing education through knowledge meetings and awareness around mental health in different areas.
Thank you, Lance. It was wonderful having you today.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. It was great to be here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.